Non, j'ai toujours un souci.
Attention grid, will all non-essential personnel leave the grid now?
Hello. Thank you, Ben. Well, apart from those issues, everything is running almost completely smoothly. A bit luckily for us, there were some issues getting onto the formation lap for the start of this race. But anyway, let's quickly go through the grid while the field forms up for the start of this race. From pole position, we have David Saber in the Eagle 73, followed by Jason White. Richard Coxon lines up third with Ibañez fourth. Scott Jurek is fifth with Kowalski sixth. Dana Schurer, our championship leader, is seventh with Jukka Martinen eighth. David Yates ninth, and rounding up out the top 10 is Pascal Mikkola. 11th is Michal Janak. 12th is Martin Lasina. Raul Jareb is 13th with Juha Bors 14th. Lee Simpson, having had a pretty good qualification run, starts 15th with Peter Hlavac. 16th. Richard Wilkes goes 17th with Fredriksson 18th. Drechler 19th. Let's see, Chapman 20th. Felipe Novaes, a newcomer to the series. He ran in the sprint races last week. Lines up 21st. Bob Wilson, having scored no qualification time, goes 22nd, and the same goes for Simon Wattman, starting from 23rd. As we come up to the start line here, and David Saber leads everyone on to the first lap of this 500-mile race around this California oval. And Saber goes into turn 1 in the lead. Coxon is second, and Jason White's trying to hold on, and he actually holds on around outside. So he claims second. And he has a draft, as does Coxon, but Coxon has to back off. White is up the inside of David Saber, going for the lead, and he also goes into the lead with Saber having to run wide. Coxon gets up the inside, and Scott Jurek also is trying, with Kowalski just behind those two. And David Saber is being left out to dry now, because here comes Kowalski as well down the start-finish straight after we have finished the first lap. But Saber has the draft from Scott Jurek's car and is able to hold on from Kowalski. So already we've had quite a hectic lap. Coxon almost ran a little bit wide there, but Kowalski is up the inside of David Saber, coming out of 2. And here comes Ibañez from behind them as well. He gets squeezed down to the inside. Don't think he will have the run now, but Kowalski goes up the inside of David Saber and past, as does Ibañez, following him through. So Saber has now dropped from 1st to 6th. That was somewhat to be expected, I suppose, because he had a good qualifying pace, but his race pace in the sprint races were a bit lacking in comparison. I think he still managed to win in the end, but early on in the race he dropped back then as well. Martin is currently sitting in 7th, with Schurer shadowing him in 8th. Yates is still inside the top 10 in 9th, and Pascal Mikkola also holds on to the 10th place. Although he's having a little bit of a look up the inside of David Yates, but he thinks better of it. He actually gets a bit deep with the wash from the car in front. Oh, and I think I saw someone off onto the infield, and I did indeed. Felipe Novaes has spun in his MVS Racers Eagle 72. I think he has an off engine in that car. Maybe. Yes, I think that should be an off engine, at least sounds like it. But he drops back about a third of a lap, unfortunately, with that spin, but still a long race, so anything can happen. And I think we have a bit of a timing issue going on here as well. And it's sorted itself back out. Coming into turn 1, Peter Lavac is... Oh, thank you, Ben. So Pascal Mikula, it looks like he has some damage to his car. He missed his pit stall. He surely has damage the way his car reacted when he tried to brake for that, so hopefully the team will be able to fix it. So he drops back a long way from his 10th place. So up in the 10th is Raul Jared, with Martin Lacina right behind him and Peter Lavac behind him. And Lavac, I saw earlier, was trying to go up inside of Martin, but right here it's Martin have a run on Raul for 10th. And then we have Pascal Mikula coming out of the pits, staying well and truly on the apron. Also just behind Lavac and Lacina we have Juha Bors, also trying to find his way up the field. This should be a pretty good battle right here. Oh, and Lavac and Martin runs a bit wide, but Lavac is up the inside, getting a nice cutback out of 3 and goes up in the inside in 4. Juha Bors decides to not follow him through. And Martin looks up the inside of Peter into 1. Looks like he got a bit too much of a shallow angle. Juha tries to get the undercut, but he's not able to pull it off. And just a little bit behind them is Richard Wilkes, who I think is the best placed Foyt engine car in the field at the moment. Also noticed that I think Martin Lacina got up the inside of Peter into 3 and 4, and he did indeed, but here comes Peter down the front stretch, trying to stay in the draft for as long as he can and look up the inside. I think he'll decide to hold off for the time being. Actually, he runs a little bit wide. That might give an opportunity for Bors, but that's not the case, and well, unfortunately for us, since we want some action. Up the front, it's still Jason White in the lead, with Richard Coxon in his newly acquired drive for the Fletcher Racing team, it's Eagle 73, and Coxon goes up the inside into 1 and goes into the lead. Oh, but he gets sideways of 1. There might be an opportunity for Jason going down the back straight here to retake the lead of the race. And we should also expect the first pit stops of the race around probably from lap 18 or so. I think that's about the earliest anyone pitted during the sprint races last week. And Scott Jurek has actually got his way up to 3rd. I think it was 4th or 5th earlier, so that's a good early bit of the race for him. Kowalski is also up the front. It's Alberto Ibañez who's fallen back a bit. And here comes Kowalski, actually up the inside of Scott Jurek. And Jurek backs off and lets Kowalski through. That's very sporting of him, and probably very smart, I think, since it's 500 miles. It's very early to be bumping any tires. On a bit further back we have Lavac and Boss at it still. They were side by side through one. Some drivers we might expect to get up the field as the race progresses would probably be Bob Wilson, who set no qualifying time, but I think he finished in the top 10 in the sprint heat that he partook in last week, so he has some pace in that car. It's just a bit will just take a bit of time for him to get up from the rear end of the field. But he's currently 16th, so he's had a pretty good start to the race, starting from 22nd position. And also Jakob Fredriksson could probably get up the field as the race progresses. He should have, as all the other Voigt engine cars, very good fuel economy, which should pay off later on into the race. I also noticed a bit further up the field just now, David Saber lost a position to Alberto Ibañez. So I'd assume Alberto might have had a mistake somewhere and lost a lot of pace, so he got hung out to dry, like David Saber were early in the race. I also noticed that there's a fight a bit further up the field still for second, third, fourth and fourth, with Jason White trying to hold on from Kowalski and one of his teammates, Scott Jurek. It looks like Kowalski might have a run on Jason White going down the back straight. He definitely has the draft. He looks up the inside and is clearly passed before the turning point for 3, where he touches the apron. Then so I think, oh, he's sideways indeed. I thought that would happen with him touching the apron. Oh, and he's sideways again. Looks like his car isn't fully happy with having a car behind, taking away some of the downforce from the rear wing. But he holds on going into 1, and I think if he can just get enough of a gap here, he should be set to go for the rest of the stint. Because looking at his lap times, he's had pretty consistent lap times, I must say, with low 47s and some high 46s, but here goes Jason up the inside in 3, but he's not able to pull it off. Kowalski holds on. It's okay. It might be that the team is wanting him to pit for strategy reasons, but the driver has the last call, I'd say, in any given situation when it comes to pit stops. As long as the fuel isn't about to run out, of course. I also noticed that Jason White got a bit loose in 1 while we were talking about the pit stop possible situation. So Scott was having a little bit of a look, but being the gentleman he is, and very smart, as we saw earlier when he let David Saber, I think it also could have been Kowalski through. I don't think he would go for any moves until it's about 50 laps to go. And it looks like most of the field has spread out quite a lot. Also noticed that Felipe Novaes has just been lapped by Richard Coxon. So, well, Felipe had a spin, so might not be that much traffic yet, but the traffic is beginning to become a factor here, I think, in the next 10 laps or so. Thank you for notifying me on that then. So Alberto Ibañez has definitely found his pace. I was talking to him after the sprint races, and he said that the late stint pace for him was very good. Also up ahead, Kowalski, Jason White was ahead of Jan Kowalski for a split second. I'd assume he had a draft and looked up in or outside going into 3. But I think Alberto will soon be at Jason White's gearbox and looking for a way past, going for the podium here before the first stint is even over. Quite so, he has a 3-second lead already, and there's not even traffic helping him yet, so unless he may... Oh, Jason White looks up the inside, up ahead. Don't think he will be able to pull it off this time either, no he doesn't. But it's hard to see... Oh... Scott Jurek almost hit the wall then. Here comes David Saber having a run because of that, but with the draft. Scott Jurek holds on and looks up the inside of Alberto, but it looks like it's mainly just to avoid any risk of hitting his teammate at the rear. As I was saying earlier, it is hard to see Richard Coxon not winning this race, but anything can happen, so we'll see, but he is definitely the favorite here. Him in that Eagle 73 is definitely a potent combination. As up ahead, this sideways action yet again between White and Kowalski. Coming on to the front straight now, Jason White firmly behind Kowalski's rear wing, looking for the draft and the way past. But he thinks better of it, with Alberto fairly close behind. And David Saber fairly close behind that. Oh, it looks like someone was off in 2. At least there were skid marks going towards the wall there. And it's unfortunately Felipe Novaes who is out of the race. I will quickly see if I can find out what happened. So he was behind David Yates and had to take a bit of an offline, and unfortunately he span to the inside of the track across the grass, but the grass wasn't slowing him enough, and he went up into the wall, damaging his suspension. And it looks like he's tried to go on for a bit, but he has come to the conclusion that it's probably not going to be possible to finish the race with the car damaged as it was. So that's unfortunate, but these kind of things happen. So with a safety car out, let's go through the field as we have just crested the 20 lap range. Well, maybe we should wait because it looks like the first set of pit stops is about to occur. It does indeed, because Coxon heads into the pits, as does Kowalski and White. Looks like the whole field is in indeed. More a question of looking if anyone stays out. Well, it looks like, yes, Mikola is a lap down, of course. Michaliak slows. I think it's to avoid being penalized for going past anyone. And I saw that Lee Simpson also stayed out on track. But other than that, everyone looks to be in the pits here. So Coxon comes out second on the road, but of course being the lead car that has pitted. Kowalski comes out fourth on the road, but as the second car to have pitted. And we'll just wait to see if any of the others yet. It looks like both Michal Janak and Lee Simpson is now heading towards the pits, so let's look through the field now that the field should be pretty much set for the rest of this yellow flag. So in the lead we have Richard Coxon, although he's in the lead, but Pascal Mikla, who was a lap down, is now on the lead lap, but first car behind the safety car. So Coxon is in the lead, Kowalski is second, Jason White sits third, David Saber is fourth, gaining a couple of positions in the pits. Alberto Ibañez is fifth, with his teammate Scott Jurek sixth. Juha Bors has climbed up to seventh. Martin Lasina is 8th, Jukka Martinen 9th, Dana Schurr lost out a bit in the pits, so I think she was 7th or 8th before the pit stops. She is in 10th. David Yates is 11th, with Michael Drechler 12th. Richard Wilkes climbed a few positions, I think, and is running 13th. Raul Jereb is 14th. Peter Lavac follows him in 15th. He lost out in the pit stops for sure. Jacob Fredriksson gained a little bit and is running 16th. Chapman is 17th. Michal Janak, after having pitted later than everyone else, is 18th. Simon Watman also pitted later by the looks of things and is trying to catch up to the field, as is Lee Simpson. They are 19th and 20th respectively. Bob Wilson also pitted late. And Pascal Mikela, of course, is first going onto the lead lap, or start of this restart. But he kindly drops to the inside of the track and lets the leaders by. So Richard Coxon leads the way with Kowalski second. I think David Saber lost out on the restart, dropping 2 positions from 4th to 6th. Schurer jumped 2 positions on the restart. And a bit further back, Jurek and Ibañez said it, and I think I saw also, that's Jason White lapping Pascal Mikla. So he gets by without too much trouble. And now it's the Velpanelli twins to go by. But here comes David Saber up the inside of Scott Jurek down the back straight, and he's able to easily get by. But Dave Saber got a little bit loose in 3, but he was able to hold it and get a good run. Oh, and Alberto Ibañez got held up a little bit behind Pascal Mikla, and Saber got held up as well, and Jurek and Saber touched a little bit coming out of 4. Don't think that should have been enough for any damage. Martinen comes up behind Jurek, but he doesn't go for any move right now. Looks like the Panelli, at least of Jurek, is suffering from a little bit of understeer early on in the run. It certainly looked like it was better later on, as David Saber gets by Mikkola. Now it's Jurek's turn, and I think he will be able to do so. But Martinen comes up really close behind him and looks up the inside just slightly, but he decides that discretion is the better part of valor, and proceed to deal a bit of contact between Jurek and Mikkola. And behind, Martinen and Schurer had a bit of a fight. And Martinen gets a bit loose behind Pascal. And here he should be able to get by. And Yakes is looking up the inside of Schurer a bit. A couple of car lengths behind. Well, it looks like Mikkola doesn't want to let anyone lap him in the turns. He clearly indicated that he was going to take the racing line into 3. And when Yakes runs a little bit wide, it gets loose. So here comes Schurer up the inside, and I think she will be able to reclaim 8th position. She does indeed. Yes, she does. And Richard Wilkes has made his way up to 10th. That's a good restart for him as well. Owen Lasina and Michael Drechler had a bit of a close run going into 3. And here comes Raoul Reb. He clearly lost out in the pit stops or at the restart. Not quite. Thank you, Ben. So Pascal Mikla decides to pit. I think he was running low on fuel, so he had no other choice but to go into the pits and fill up and maybe change tires. Try to get some kind of advantage to get his lap and a bit back. Oh, and Raoul Jereb gets a bit loose coming up to 4, and Peter Lavac looks up inside down the front stretch. And Wattman also came with lots of speed from further back, but he checks up when he had nowhere to go, being boxed in between Jereb and Lavac. And Lavac and Jereb is again side by side down the back straight. I think feels like they've been battling for the whole race so far. Oh, and I think Michael Drechler slightly scraped the wall down coming out of 4. But again, Jereb goes up the inside of Lavac, so I assume they will be exchanging positions for quite a time to come here. And further up, I noticed that Alberto Ibañez has made his way past Jason White and will probably be setting his sight on the gearbox and wing of Jan Kowalski and try to get up there. Kowalski has actually been able to, at least for the opening 5 laps here, keep up with Richard, but looks like he's now beginning to check out again and pull quite a gap on Jan. There comes David Saber, looking up the inside of Jason White, going into 3, and he gets by. So maybe if Alberto and David works together, they could catch up to Jan Kowalski at least. Again, it seems like Coxon will be very hard to beat here tonight, so... But again, we'll see. It's still... We're still only 33 laps into this 200 lap event. Oh, and a bit further back, I just went to check up on the battle between Lavac and Raul Jereb, and Jereb had a bit of a notch with the wall. I don't think it will have been enough to damage the car heavily, but I think he might be having slightly different tire wear from now on. Well, we have a nice little battle group here with Lavac and Jereb, who's been at it for a long time, and Simon Wattman has gotten involved, as has Jakob Fredriksson in his Coyote Foyt powered car. Coyote, of course, is the chassis, but yeah. When he has a bit of a run on the Simon, but Simon should have a lot more power on the... I was going to say under the bonnet, but I don't have a bonnet, but in the engine. Oh, Simon runs wide. So there goes Jakob Fredriksson up the inside. Taking nice advantage of that slight mistake from Simon. But here comes Simon up the inside down the front stretch, so it looks like indeed the Foyt engine isn't quite enough to stay ahead, but in the draft I think Jakob should be able to keep up. And also not that far behind that little battle group is Bob Wilson, who's now in 18th, having pitted. I think he was one of those pitting a little bit later than the first almost whole field. Lavac and Jereb is side by side going into turn 1 yet again. This time Lavac gets by Jereb. When Jereb gets sideways in 2. So it would look like that is by far the closest battle on track, with the field being spread quite wide. There are a couple of cars that are fairly close to one another, but definitely Jereb and Lavac has been the closest so far. But I also notice now that Simon Wattman and Bob Wilson has gotten quite close to one another. So Fredriksson has lost out, Bob Wilson is going by him. And now Bob is having a little bit of a look up inside of Simon. So Simon holds it around the outside in 3. And now I think Bob will try to look for a good exit here. Oh, Simon gets a bit loose, so Bob should have the run here. He does indeed. He looks at the inside just a little bit. He has the overlap. Simon might once again be able to hold it on outside. No, Bob has a good run. Also noticed that I think someone else will have had a mistake just now, because that was Rauli Rebbe. He probably got a bit loose in one. But Bob Wilson has made his way past Simon Wattman, who also lost out to Jacob Fredriksson during that same move. And it's definitely one of those classic situations in oval racing that if you end up being passed by one, more will quickly fill the gap and keep you losing positions. And Bob Wilson also gets by Rauli Reb now, so looks like Bob has finally found his pace, and looks to be going really well here, because he had a very good exit compared to Raul. Here comes Jacob Fredriksson from a bit further back. He looks up the inside and used the draft, and he gets by Raul. It looks like there were a bit of a lag on my screen, but I think they touched in the middle of 3 then. And Simon is also trying to look up to make use of this battle up ahead. But Jacob is... Thank you, Ben. It seems like Pascal is struggling quite a bit with the car now, considering he's in the pits again. I also noticed there were a bit more drivers swapping places, but I think I saw pieces of car on the inside. Yep, David Yates has spun. He's spun into the infield. Looks like it's coming out of turn 2, and unfortunately it's out of the race. But I think that we have indeed, luckily, avoided a safety car. But that's unfortunate. Looks like suspension damage, so probably David might have hit the wall somewhere and ended up spinning, having lost control of the car with the damage inflicted with the wall hit. Spinning onto the infield, and that's unfortunately where his race ended. But these kind of things happen, unfortunately. But generally it looks like it's status quo up the front, so let's keep having a look down the further down the field. Simon Wattman just got loose going into 3. Sorry, that's 2 actually. Looks like he turned in a bit earlier, with taking the lack of downforce in mind, being close behind Michal, but he respected the loss of downforce a bit too much, as he ended up onto the apron, spinning up his wheels slightly. And we should probably be closing in on our second set of pit stops fairly soon. Probably around 45, 46 maybe, the first set of drivers would pit. And looks like further up the field, Jason White has lost a position to Jukka Martonen, although he's Thank you, Ben. So Bob Wilson goes into the pits. I think this is a bit of a safety margin pit stop here, maybe, considering he looks to be alone in the pits. Would seem to be a fuel-only stop, maybe one side tire change, but I think that was only fuel. And you have both Michael Drechler, Peter Lauwers is also in the pits. So it looks like Bob Wilson was a lap early compared to everyone else, taking a bit of a safety margin in mind, but would definitely seem to be the time to pit. As the leader hits lap 45, I think, 46 actually, as he just passes the start-finish line once again. So it'll be interesting to see who gains and loses in these green flag stops. It looks like Simon Wattman has had some trouble coming into the pits. I just noticed. Looks like he has some suspension damage. It looks like he has had a moment somewhere around the track, because he has been carrying that for quite a while. Probably occurred in the battles that we saw earlier. Hopefully the team will be able to fix this car so he can continue on. In the meantime, with all the pit stops, Jakob Ferguson has briefly been in the lead with the fuel economy in the Voigt engine car, but Richard Coxon... Oh, Jakob Ferguson actually missed his pit stall by quite a margin actually. That's unfortunate. But anyway, with that, Richard Coxon reclaims his lead of this race and keeping a 1.6 second advantage to Jan Kowalski, so it doesn't look like he lost anything during the pit stops. Also, when coming out of the pits, Jakob Ferguson comes out right behind Michael Drechler, both Voigt engine cars. So that should hopefully be quite a good battle once Jacob's tires gets up to temperature. I'd assume he changed tires at least. Wow, and here comes Martin Lacina. He had a really good run onto the front straight. And easily gets up the inside and past Jakob. Someone who did gain during the pit stops though was Jukka Martanen, who is now sitting third. So yet again, he has a very good pit crew on his side, by the looks of things, as unfortunately Simon Wattman's car has not been possible to be repaired, so he is out of the race. As the leader will very shortly he actually has just crested the 150-mile distance, and that would equal 50 laps. So only 150 to go. It's a very long race, this one. I think all the drivers will be very tired after when this has finished. Or rather, I'd be surprised if they weren't tired. But apart from the pit stops shaking up the field a little bit, Alberto Ibañez lost out quite a bit. Richard Wilkes gained 2 positions. Bob Wilson has gained a couple of positions, while Jason White also lost out in the Panelli, so maybe the Panelli boys are having a bit of trouble in the pit stops for one reason or another. But actually, Bob Wilson and Jason White are good friends off the track, so maybe this could be a good battle. Unless Bob Wilson has more pace and pulls away, of course, but could turn into a good battle fairly soon. As Alberto Ibañez moves past Scott Jurek and begins to chase after David Saber, who is about half the front straight up the road here, or about 2 seconds. Oh, actually, Scott Jurek and Ibañez are battling here as teammates. Oh, they almost touched them, lapping Mick Chapman, who's trying to get out of the way. Bit of a touch between Ibañez and Chapman as well, going into 3. No one's fault really, it's just one of those things. Here comes Alberto up the inside, making use of the draft. And Scott backs out a bit before the turn and lets his teammate through. And actually the battle has started between Bob Wilson and Jason White. Bob just got loose in 2 and Jason White came around outside to get by him, but Bob is not letting go. Well, he did actually decide to let go of that position and that fight for the moment. And drops behind and goes to 11th, and Jason White is back into the top 10. Certainly. Just let me bring it up myself quickly here. So the Ontario Motor Speedway is a 4-turn, 2.5 mile oval, and this event in particular is, as we mentioned earlier, 500 miles or 200 laps. In the turns it's 9 degrees of banking, which is about 4 degrees more than what it was back at Indianapolis, which this is a twin slash western reproduction of. if that makes sense. But essentially, the owner of Ontario Motor Speedway wanted a Indianapolis of the West, and with that, they decided to build this track. The track itself was opened in 1970 and cost $25.5 million to build. It has hosted the champ cars, stock cars, sports cars and drag racing, all of which can drive on the circuit, since it also has a road racing section on the inside, in other terms known as a roval section. As I mentioned, there's a bit more banking around this track, so it's actually has slightly faster speeds and lap times than at Indianapolis, and it was unfortunately demolished in 1980, presumably because of houses for people to live in needing to be built, but that's just me guessing, of course. I actually don't know exactly why it was demolished, but that's the most usual reason for the tracks to be demolished. As we may go back into the race, having had a bit of a little bit of time away, looks like Richard Coxon has increased his lead by about a second in the last 10 laps. Jan Kowalski is still second and Martin is third. David Saber is holding station and keeping the distance at about 2 seconds to Alberto Ibañez. It looks like there could be a bit of a battle shaping up, just maybe, between Jurek and Schurer. Dana Schurer not having her best evening of racing here tonight, mainly because of looking at the earlier races where she's finished first or second at every meeting. Also there's some smoke here, so Raul Jareb is on the infield. Presumably he lost it under power. It looks like he's heading into the pit lane. Seemed to have a bit of suspension damage, or possibly a track rod. Guys snaking a little bit more than he would probably prefer. And unfortunately, Raul Jareb has decided that that would be his race done. It's a bit unfortunate because he had a good run in the sprint races, as I recall. That's pretty much the only fortunate thing with 500-mile races is that they are a bit too long, so the field gets spread out quite a bit, so there aren't any battles to talk about, but maybe a little bit. But actually there could be a bit of a battle shaping up, because I don't think who seems so. Indeed, Lavak has closed in on Bob Wilson, so maybe Bob is struggling a little bit with the heavier fuel load in the car, considering he had a lot of pace later in the fuel stint. Thank you, Ben. So Pascal Mikla has again been into the pits, coming out, just making sure to does his best to stay below the yellow line and out of the racing line. And for Richard in the lead, it looks like it's very smooth sailing. There doesn't seem to be any battle groups for him to contend with while lapping, at least not yet. He's fairly close to Martin Nasina and will probably put him a lap down in a lap or two. Maybe even less than that, looking at the difference, how much he closes in the turn. He'll probably draft by right here, and he does indeed. Martin makes sure to stay a bit wider than his usual racing line, which is very sporting and considerate, not taking any risks of possibly hitting the leader. And Kowalski makes his way past Juha Bos and puts him a lap behind himself. Oh, it looks like there's a bit of a battle here between Alberto Ibañez and Dana Schurer, as Alberto goes up the inside in 3, that is. And I'd assume Alberto will now try to make his way up to his teammate Scott once again and pass him. Oh, Scott Jurek just hit the apron, got very loose, but he was able to keep it out of the wall. So this should probably be Alberto going by on the back straight. And Dana will surely try to follow him through. But she isn't able to. And it looks like Alberto Ibañez will be heading into the pits. And it would indeed be time for pit stops. I think it's about 22 laps since most of the field pitted. And again, one of the early pit stoppers here is Bob Wilson, who I just noticed came out of the pit lane. Johan Dressler is in the pit lane, as is Jukka Matanen. Oh, that's a very precarious angle for Matanen in the pits there. I hope there's no issues with that. Schurer and Saber is also in the pit lane, as Sharpman enters the pit lane as well, as does Richard Coxon and Jan Kowalski. Fredriksson yet again stays out a bit longer than everyone else. At least I don't think I've seen him in the pit lane during the past few laps. Boss, I think had I think he had an early pit stall. He had indeed. So it'll be pretty interesting to see where. I think I at least saw Martin coming. Oh, that's Kowalski, so Martin is out of pits already then. Yes, indeed, is still third. So with the most recent set of pit stops pretty much finished, only Jacob Fredriksson, who is now entering the pit lane, left to do his pit stop for this fuel stint. Let's run through the field again, I think, to see if there's any movers during this set of pit stops. So Coxon is still in the lead and has actually pulled out a very big 10 seconds here. So he either had some luck with traffic or others pitting at the same or at other times than him. Because I don't think Kowalski would have lost the whole 6 seconds just out on track. Not in that quicker time span, at least. Jan Kowalski is still second, and Martin is still third. Dana Schurer has leapfrogged up to fourth, having sat in 6th or 7th before the pit stops. Alberto Ibañez had a decent pit stop because I think he was in 5th before the pit stops. Jason White, I think, lost out a little bit. Oh, actually, it's David Saber who has lost out. He has dropped way back to 13th. So he must have had some big trouble in the pit lane. That's unfortunate for the Pat Patrick racing driver. But Scott Jurek is 6th, Jason White 7th, Richard Wilkes, and still the best placed fight engine car is 8th. Martin Lassina has made his way up to 9th, with David Saber dropping back. Bob Wilson is now up into the top 10. And right behind Martin Lassina, actually. So here we have a heavy battle as Bob Wilson goes up towards inside, going down towards turn 3. And he, I think, has made a move stick. He has indeed, so Bob Wilson moves up to 9th, and Martin Lassina is demoted to 10th. Peter Lavak is 11th, Michael Drechler in the second best fight engine car is 12th. David Saber, as I mentioned earlier, dropped back quite a bit in this set of pit stops, sitting 13th, dropping from 3rd or 4th. 4th, actually, I think he was before the pit stops. Boss is 14th in his Kingfish 73. Nico Fredriksson is still in 15th, as he was before the pit stop started. Lee Simpson is 16th and a lap down. Then we have Michal Janak, who is the first of the drivers that are 2 laps down, as he runs wide to let Jan Kowalski through. Very nice and sporting of him. Mick Chapman is 18th, and Pascal Mikkeler is still running with his McLaren in 19th. Our retirees so far after 75 laps: Raoul Jared with suspension damage. Simon Wattman, I think, also suffered some kind of suspension failure. And David Yates, who unfortunately hit the wall and damaged his suspension. And Felipe Novaes, who spun into the infield, and unfortunately the car didn't slow down enough, and he came across the track and up into the outside wall. It looks like Scott Jurek might have... no, that would seem to be a timing glitch, I think. Thank you, Ben. And Lee Simpson is into the pit lane. I think he also has a Foyt engine in his car, so maybe he's able to get a lot of very good fuel mileage around here. Maybe running on a slightly lower boost setting than most of the other drivers. And it would seem like Scott Jurek has indeed had some kind of issue, because he's now down in 15th. I'm not sure what has happened, but clearly something has. So with that, Peter Lavac is promoted to 10th. And Jacob Fredriksson is finally up into 14th. I think he's been pretty tired of being in 15th for a bit over 40 or so laps. So I just had a quick glimpse at some lap times here, and it would seem like the fastest car in the race is our leader, although it's very tight. The field, as it looks at the moment, is fairly representative of all the drivers' fastest times. Just noticed that David Saber is back up into the top 10. He just got by Michael Drechler. And right behind Michael is Peter Lavac. So Lavac lost out during an exchange here because he was in 10th before. So maybe this could be a battle to watch for a lap or two if we're lucky. And here comes Lavak. He has a bit of a run down the front straight, but it isn't quite enough to make a move. And in the meantime, David Saber rumps away and looks to try and get up to Martin Lacina. It would seem like Michael Rechler's Eagle 72 fight is very well set up. It seems very neutral in the turns, as I noticed someone in the pits, possibly Pascal Nicola. It is indeed. Since he's been a bit off strategy to everyone else, that's why I'd assume it was him. But to come back to the point I was making earlier, but it looks like Lavac's car is a bit understeery a bit more understeery than other cars when in traffic. He's able to hold his line, but he isn't able to have a good speed. But he had a very good turn 4 then, but it looks like he's very happy to stay under the rear wing of Rechler and save some fuel maybe. Making use of the draft to do that. And here comes Pascal Nicola out of the pits as Rechler and Lavac goes by. And a bit up the road from those two we have Janak and Saber at it, fighting for 9th and 10th as Saber gets a run out to turn 4 and is cleanly by before turn 1. Oh, sorry, that was actually a lapping. I'm sorry, yeah. Oh well, anyway, Saber comes up behind Lee Simpson and puts him another lap down as well. But just up the road here we can actually see Martin Lacina's car, so David is definitely getting closer. And someone else who is sort of trying to, I think at least, make his way back up the road, but that seems a little bit strange because he looks to be pretty much in the same position he was before Scott Jurek, but as in on the road, but somewhere he has lost 2 laps. But oh well, maybe we'll find out at some point and solve that riddle then. And in the meantime, David Saber has actually caught and passed Martin Lacina for 9th. And Saber will now probably look to catch up to Bob Wilson. And as Saber enters the front straight, Wilson is about to enter turn 1, so that's quite a margin to catch up. I also notice in the timing that Ibañez and Schurer has gotten very close to one another, so thank you, Ben. So Bob Wilson once again heads into the pits fairly early compared to everyone else, but it is about 22 laps. As also I noticed Mick Chapman was into the pits a lap or so earlier. Thank you, Ben. And Peter Lavak also, as Ben mentions, enters the pit lane. And Alberto Ibañez also. Oh, he actually spin. Oh, that's so unfortunate. So that's Alberto Ibañez out of this race. Luckily, there were no pit crew out on the pit road then, because that could have turned very ugly. But yeah, that's very unfortunate. He was having a very good run up until then. It looked like just a little bit too much rear brake trying to get into his pit stall caused that issue. And thank you, Ben. Bob Wilson makes his way out of the pits, now sitting in 16th, but there are a few drivers who are yet to pit. I think Coxon hasn't been into the pits, nor has Kowalski or White. Matanen, I think, may have been into the pits. Visual Wilkes hasn't been into the pits yet either. I think David Saber will have just pitted, maybe. Or maybe not, but Schurer has pitted. Martin Lasina goes by. Scott Jurek is quite a bit behind, so it looks like Schurer should make her way out of pits in 8th place on the road for the time being. He is indeed, and Kowalski follows him into the pit lane. Let's see if Jason White also decides to head for the pits. Actually, he is coming in through turn 2. I thought he was in the last turn, but oh well. Most interesting side of this, I think, will be to see where Matanen comes out compared to Kowalski and Coxon. And now he comes, David Saber comes out to the pits. I think I saw Pascal Mikula in the pits as well. So Kowalski is actually already out to the pit apron as well. So it's actually more than a back straight between Jukka Matanen and Jan Kowalski. And Coxon is another almost full straight ahead of Jan Kowalski. So would seem like the top 2, maybe 3 even, is pretty much set right now. I bit further behind. Jacob Fredriksson has not pitted, but it looks like he's getting ready to pit now. But he's currently sitting 5th on the road. But that position will be inherited by Jason White, as Fredriksson indeed goes into the pit lane. Here he goes by now, and Richard Wilkes also goes by, so I think Fredriksson will probably drop behind Michael Janak, so 13th maybe behind Scott, behind Juha Boos. Juha Boos is actually in a slight battle with Scott Jurek, but we'll see. And Michael Janak goes into the pits. Here comes Jurek on Juha Boos. Looks up the inside into 1. Very nice and textbook pass done. Juha Boos looks for a good exit onto 2 to try and find the slipstream, but I don't think he's quite close enough here. As David Saber is also into the pits. Looks like he had a stop and go, because it doesn't look like he stopped for very long in the pit stall. That seems a little bit strange. And actually, Scott Jurek is into the pits as well, and he missed his pit stall. And he's actually out. Oh, he's out of the race. Okay. Okay. Maybe he has. Maybe it's a drive-through penalty. He has and not a stop-go. Well, this is very strange. But anyway, in the meantime, unfortunately, Scott Jurek is out of this race. And I also noticed that Bob Wilson is out of this race. I don't remember seeing him retire earlier. Oh, there's been some disqualifications. What? Dana Schurer has been disqualified, Michael Drechler has been disqualified, Mick Chapman and Bob Wilson. What on earth is happening here? Well, I'm very confused. Well, that's unfortunately a very large portion of the field ending up out of this race. Presumably some kind of issue with the track that unfortunately hasn't been found during testing of the track as such. Yeah, that's extremely unfortunate. Anyway, back to the race. Coxon is still leading, and he has about still 10 seconds to second place. With all the strange happenings. Richard Wilkes is up into the top 5 in his Void-powered Eagle 72, which is a very good race, and it looks like... And we have another disqualification, I think. Was that some... It looks like someone had an incident somewhere. Anyway, we have now reached the halfway distance of this race, and we are joined by Alberto Ibañez. So before going through how the field sits at the moment, welcome to the booth, Alberto.
Hello, thank you. Since I can't drive, I thought I would commentate a bit.
Thank you for joining in. That was a very unfortunate incident you had, by all accounts.
Yeah, it was my fault completely anyway. I had been having lots of problems during the race. First, I lost the calibration of the clutch, which made the restarts a bit of a big trouble. Then I lost all the tab keys, so I didn't know which one I was nearby racing. It was difficult to set up the overtaking because you didn't really know what kind of car you had in front until you were almost on top of it. And then finally, to compound things, I discovered that I had a button marked wrong. It seems that the reason is that I had been practicing with the Group C cars for the Kailami 1,000 kilometers, and I still had the cat engine option mapped somewhere. So every time I tried to check my pits, it would do bang, and all power went off. The hood disappeared, and the car slowed down. That's the reason why maybe you saw it in the track twice. I suddenly lost ground, almost stopped on the track, had to go down to the apron. And when I managed, I pushed all buttons at random. And then in the end, I managed to restart it. But it was really a nightmare. A really bad experience.
Yes, I think I can understand that. That's all manners of troubles at the same time, but at least you were still in the top 5 up until you were forced to retire. So
yeah, the car was driving beautifully. I think I had one of the quickest cars in the track. I was feeling in that regard quite well with it. But it became a bit of a game of catch-up because I was losing time in stupid things. First pit stop, I botched it, stopping too late. I had to reverse a bit, some meters. And then later on, well, all these things started happening. It got me really mad. I lost concentration, and the last pit stop that I attempted, I stupidly downshifted into first. The car spun. Instead of braking a bit more, and then I went into the wall. I discovered that by fiddling with the buttons, trying to restart the car, apparently it had changed the brake bias completely.
Okay, that's...
So when I pushed the brakes, I hammered them down and downshifted into first. The clutch that had no calibration didn't engage properly, and all the brake bias was on the rear. So I made a nice stunt and hit the wall. Thankfully, I didn't hit someone who was pitting in front of me.
Quite so. Well, thank you, Alberto. We'll hear more from you during the rest of this race. But for now, we'll have a quick ad break, and we'll see you at the other end of it.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in so far.
Okay.
You've heard that racing
I came
engines
just in
need an
time
oil treatment. They do.
to report
In fact,
my
all car engines do,
unluckiness.
including yours. But PTA oil treatment is made especially for cars like yours. It helps the car that's a few years old get a few years older. It helps quiet noisy engines, improves compression, and reduces oil burning and excessive smoking. Add PTA to your oil It's the performance-tested additive. Get it? Well, then get it. If your car is hard to start or stalls frequently, chances are you need Gum Out, the original carburetor cleaner. Just pour it in the gas tank. Gum Out cleans the inside of your carburetor while you drive, just as Gum Out in the new Jet Spray can cleans the outside. Your car starts easier, runs better with a carburetor that's clean, inside and out.
Hi. On the golf course, I'm Betsy Cullen. But at home, I'm a Handy Wipes wiper.
Betsy knows Handy Wipes are stronger than ever, with rinsable honeycombs to soak up spills like grape juice. Then rinse clean.
They're great. They scrub dirty dishes and keep on going. Scour greasy range tops and keep on going. By the way, I'll be playing in the Colgate Dinosaur Women's Golf Championship, and you can bet my Handy Wipes will be right along with me.
What's this?
Shrimp from the HSO Fish and Chip store.
But I told you I wanted fish and chips. I didn't say shrimp.
Well, now they have shrimp there, too.
I don't want HSO shrimp. I want HSO fish and chips.
But the shrimp is big and delicious. Come on.
No.
Yes.
I wanted fish.
Try it.
I hate shrimp.
Go ahead.
I love shrimp.
You love me.
Huh? Do you come with chips?
I come with...
Try the delicious new shrimp at H Salt Fish and Chip stores. You'll love it.
After dinner, that's when I get to the breakfast dishes. By then, they're day old. Everything's stuck on. But I use Cascade.
Cascade cuts through most dried-on foods, even this day-old egg, leaving dishes clean. But clean is not enough. Now Cascade's famous sheeting action fights drops that spot. Dishes come out virtually spotless.
I've tried others, but none comes closer to getting day-old dishes spotless. Cascade really helps me.
Hello, I'm Robert Reed. You know, purchasing a home is a big step for most of us, and you'll be better prepared if you learn the facts on home buying before you buy. Get the facts on title protection, closing costs, and other helpful information. Write for this free booklet, Blueprint for Home Buying, Alta, ALTA, Box 566, Washington, D.C. Take care of your bunch. Know the facts.
I have a problem. In fact, 4 problems. They're all sweet and lovable, but all kind of active. That's why we used Vinyl Shield paneling in the family room. It's from Georgia Pacific, and it looks great. It costs less than $4 a panel, and is it tough? The vinyl finish is easy to clean, no matter what happens. Vinyl Shield, because nobody's perfect.
This Christmas, tell him. Tell him you'd like warm and creamy from Lady Chic.
Tell him it makes beauty creams warm.
Tell him it makes your skin look soft and pretty.
Tell him warm feels better than cold.
Tell him Chic proved warm cleans better than cold.
Tell him it's warm and creamy from the Loretta Young division of Chic. And if he still doesn't get it for you, tell him he goofed.
We brought Mrs. Larson and her daughter to the dusty attic to show you the difference Endust makes. Mrs. Larson uses nothing on her dust cloth. Susan sprays her cloth with Endust. Here they come. The unsprayed cloth is scattering the dust. But the cloth sprayed with Endust picks up dust like a dust magnet. Look, it picked up 6 times more dust and dirt. The dirty dust cloth wins. Endust. You'll wonder how you got your house clean without it.
The makers of Fleischmann's margarine improve nature's egg. Because even though it's packed with all the good things you need, it's got one thing most people don't need: too much cholesterol. In fact, eggs are the single highest source of cholesterol in man's diet. Introducing Fleischmann's Egg Beaters, the fresh frozen cholesterol-free egg substitute. Fleischmann's Egg Beaters, the taste and nutrition of farm fresh eggs, but no cholesterol.
We don't have a lot of money, but Tom wanted wall paneling in our first home. I said on our budget. Then we went to our building materials dealer and found Gold Rush plywood paneling by Georgia Pacific. It's only $4.99 a panel. Fantastic, isn't it? We found paint and carpeting colors, too, at Georgia Pacific's Imagination Center.
Visit your building materials dealer and see Gold Rush, paneling you can afford.
Even if you haven't struck it rich. Yet.
You've heard that racing engines need an oil treatment. They do. In fact, all car engines do, including yours. But PTA oil treatment is made especially for cars.
Welcome back to this 500-mile race and around Ontario Motor Speedway, and you unfortunately join us behind a safety car after a unfortunate accident involving Richard Wilkes. He was about to be lapped, but tried to stay ahead through 1 and 2. Unfortunately hit the apron, and it caused him to spin up into the outside wall, and unfortunately his Eagle 72 was pretty much destroyed.
Yeah, it was very unfortunate. He was on that now doing a very good race, really making the most of that poor Void engine. And it's also very unlike of him, because he's normally very conscious and aware of everything that is going around him, and it's not easy for him to clip the apron like that. But this is a long race, so it has a big toll always on concentration.
Indeed. Well, maybe it was the fact that he had someone behind him, so the downforce on his rear wing wasn't there like he might have expected it to be.
Yeah, that could also very likely be the cause, because he was getting an unstable car because of having someone behind him that could very likely have made him clip too much the apron or steer too much into the corner, because normally he would not have had that rear so loose. So this could very well be the reason.
During this yellow flag, many people are pitting. I think it's a bit early compared to how everyone has pitted during the green flag running, but well, of course
It's
you
hard
take
to
the
tell, because
opportunity.
by now everyone is on a very different strategy.
Quite well. Do you think anyone will be able to beat Richard tonight? Richard Coxon?
Well, Jan Kowalski has always been there. Not quite as quick as Richard, but he has always been there in striking distance. So we need to see what happens towards the end of the race. It's very difficult to run in dirty air behind someone. So it's very likely also that Jan is simply trying to keep his freedom up and stay in the same lap as Richard, and is saving the best for the end.
That's very true. I didn't think of that. And we are coming towards the end of this safety car run. So Mikola is first on the road, then Lavak, and then our leader Richard Coxon. So they come up towards the start-finish line, and the race is again underway. And it looks like Coxon will stay in the lead from now, though there could be troubles ahead with the field being bunched up.
Well, he certainly has now Jan closer than ever. But I don't think that Jan will really try to overtake unless he has the feeling that he can have a better rhythm than Richard. So we'll see. He seems, for now at least, content to be following him. Richard is trying to use the traffic to his advantage, because he knows that maybe if he puts 1 or 2 cars between Jan and him when going into one of the turns, that could very well let him open a gap. This is a movement that he has attempted now. It's worked well so far, because Pascal Mikula is right there, and not with many options of getting out of the way. So
Indeed.
that has in
and
fact
Kowalski also got a
given
little bit loose there.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's also because he has a car right up on his tail.
Quite. Oh, Kowalski Mikola got very loose then. He also, in the same kind of manner, having a car behind him. Martinen was trying to make use of the traffic as well, but unfortunately he wasn't able to follow everyone else through, or everyone else, but Coxon and Kowalski through. Looks like he will go by Lavak now, so that only leaves Mikola between him and the top two. Oh well, only and only. Pascal is in one of the most powerful cars on the field, I think. But he gets by now, and he has about 2 seconds to make up. That would be quite a tall order, I think.
Well, you never know. This is a very long race, and well, you just have to see how they are going. I mean, if they are on a steady rhythm, it could be very well that they are simply playing a bit cat and mouse. None of them is really taking his cards out.
That seems very, very plausible. In the meantime, during this restart, Martin Lacina and Jason White has gotten fairly close to one another here. Only thorn in the side of Jason at the moment is that Juha Boos is separating now. Who
That's
is
right.
himself trying to unlap himself by the looks of things.
They are very close now. It was a dangerous situation when you're going three-way there. But Juha has seen them coming, and he has made the maneuver easy. Behind them is right now Jakob Fredriksson, who wants to try to fish in the situation, and a bit in the confusion, because he's right behind Juha Boos. So it would be a very good opportunity for him to gain another position, while Juha is busy trying to follow Jason and Martin.
Quite, though I think he will struggle to stay ahead of Juha Boos, since Juha has the Offenhauser and Fredriksson has the somewhat lower horse-powered Foyt engine. We see
Yes,
it early in the race
right.
that's
Right. But they are also likely on different strategies, so you never know. The Foyt has a better mileage, so it could well happen that when they are out of sync in their pit stops, in the end, this movement pays off for Jakob.
very possible. He has stayed out 2 to 3 laps longer than Richard Coxon and Jan Kowalski. Oh, and
So
I
Jason
think
White has meanwhile moved to 4th. He has been able to overtake Martin Lacina.
Yeah, but I think
And,
he passed him into turn 1, and Juha Boos
Yes.
touched the wall coming out of 4.
Yes, so Jason has been able to shake off the group that he was immersed in, and is now trying to catch up with you, Jonatan.
And here comes Fredriksson up the inside of Juha Boos in that battle group you mentioned, but he backs off. I think that's probably a good idea, considering going three wide into any oval racing turn is a very dangerous maneuver. It would seem like this is the closest fight on the track at the moment, and it is for 7th and 8th. I could easily see Jakob, as he goes up the inside now, try to go by and then stick onto Martin Lacina's rear wing and make use of his draft to stay ahead of Juha Boos.
Meanwhile, Richard Wilkes has been reporting also in the forum, and he said that he had a lapse of concentration that proved fatal when the rear got a bit loose because he was being leapt. Oh.
He had been cutting it close coming out of turn 4 a couple of times, and looks like he finally cut it too close.
Yes, indeed.
Which is very unfortunate because he was having a very good run up until that point.
Well, that leaves us with 9 cars in the race. Oh yes, we could interview him if he wants.
User left your channel. Channel switched. User joined your channel.
Good evening, Jason.
Hey guys.
How have your race been so far?
It's been kind of an up and down race. I got to lead a bit early, got some TV time, and then I found that the dirty air was really starting to get to the car as the tires got worn. So I kind of settled back, and then I totally botched a pit stop. I missed my pit box and had to reverse the car. And
welcome to the club.
Yeah, I know. And then, but I made it even worse because I went to hit neutral, the button that's normally neutral, and I forgot that I had remapped it, and so I shut the car off. So I had to start the car again. They had the
same thing for me.
The Samsonite crew had to get...
that's the reason it also happened to me. Yeah. Probably like me because you have been testing for the 1,000 kilometers in California.
Remap a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, but then through the use of some clever, change 2 tires here instead of 4, I was able to get ahead of some people in the serial on pit stops, and then in other situations, okay, what the hell is this? Why is everyone... I don't know. But in any case, I was in a situation where, if I could save fuel a couple of times and extend my stop by 1 lap, and that helped get me a few positions here and there. So, I don't know. We'll see how this pans out.
You have no pit. The leaders are in.
Well, I might pit the next time around. I mean, I don't think I could have pitted on that lap.
I'll let you concentrate on that.
Yeah, well, I don't think I could have pitted on that lap anyway because I'm a lap down. But yeah, I'm gonna go and top off here, since there's probably not gonna be many more of these. Okay.
Okay. Good luck for the rest of the race.
Thanks.
User was moved out of your channel. User left your channel. Channel switched.
So we just heard it. Yeah, Jason's impressions.
Yep, and it seems like he has had almost as an eventful race as you have, Alberto. So a lot can happen in 500 miles by the sound of things.
It's really funny because we have been suffering the same error. I mean, both Jason and me have been working on the tracks for HSO, doing lots of testing and that, and then also trying to find a setup for this race. On top of that, trying to do some brief testing for the Castrol 1,000 kilometers, and then we get that. But it's okay. That's what happens when you try to do too many things at a time.
Quite. Well, at least it's all for the fun of it. There's no loss in any other side of it, so to speak. So
we'll see what happens now on the restart.
Yep.
Jan Kowalski right now following Yuka, who is sandwiched by the leader and Jan Kowalski. The two quickest cars in the track right now.
Well, actually, it looks like Jukka Matanen had a quicker pit stop because he has come out ahead of Jan Kowalski.
Yuka always has quick pit stops. We've seen that in previous races. He's very quick. Somehow he has got really the hang of it. I don't know if it's practice or simply his own skill allows him to do that, but he always gains a bit on the pit stops. Remember also what happened here in the quali heat. And the pace car is out, so it looks like we're going for green flag when they cross the start finish line.
This should be very interesting with the leading three all together without traffic ahead.
I don't think that Yuka can expect to keep Jan Kowalski very much behind him, but we'll see what happens. They agree now, going now for turn 1. Jan Kowalski already made his move, and Yuka took a defensive line, just trying to let him pass without having many problems. It's going up high. Jan Kowalski seems not to be willing to make the pass, and Yuka has tried to go behind Richard so as not to lose the slipstream. So far it's looking good, but the superiority of Richard's car will probably be shown when we do 3 or 4 turns more, because in each turn that Eagle 73 is going to have a bit more grip than the other cars. So there you see it. He has already put some yards between them. Jan Kowalski therefore is getting now impatient, trying to get Yuka's slipstream, and probably will make his move right now.
Goes up the inside. Looks like, yep, he makes a stick. Very nice textbook oval move there.
Yeah, Yuka was always in every moment very aware of what was going on. He knows he can't really fight those other cars at the moment. So he made it easy and just tried not to lose the train. But it will be difficult.
It will indeed, considering Richard has about 0.7 of a second lead to Jan. I think he will probably be out of the slipstream now as well. Or maybe not. It looks like he's closed in just a little bit on that straight. It looks like Richard will...
I don't see Jan Kowalski really willing to overtake Richard. Seems to be content to be there in second position. He knows that Richard has a good rhythm, and he's happy to follow him. Richard is probably also by now quite confident that he is not going to get attacked by Jan. He knows that that both are going to solve the differences towards the end of the race in a personal duel. So their priority right now is running away from the pack, not having someone else mix there. But if Richard can have an opportunity, he will certainly try to open a gap with Jan. He's just not trying to do it madly.
Oh, and Jan just had a bit of a problematic turn 1, so I think Richard might have gotten the gap he wanted now.
So far he's not losing the slipstream in the straights, and you have to remember that besides having also one of the top chassis, Jan's car has one of the best Offenhauser engines. Richard has in turn, the average Offenhauser, which is not a huge power difference, but it's certainly enough not to allow him to shake off Jan Kowalski. Jan in turn has it quite easy to follow Richard, at least in the straights. If he's losing a bit of ground in the turns, he knows he can make up for it in the straights as long as the difference wasn't really exaggerated.
That would seem to be true at the moment, because he is definitely closing in right now. He's gained almost half a second.
After this restart, I got a bit surprised, and I thought that Jason had a better rhythm and that he was going to be able to stick behind Yuka. But that doesn't seem to be the case for now. He's putting some distance between Martin Lathina and him, but he isn't able to follow Yuka as I would have expected.
Well, maybe... don't know. I think at least I've heard that the Panelli has quite a bit of understeer, especially on full of the fuel. So Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yes, it's a car that generally understeers more. Of course, you can dial it out with more front wing, but then you usually have troubles in the exit of the turn. So yes, in general, well, it's a car that will not be as positive going in, and on cold tires, it certainly has a bit of a problem with that. So we'll see if Jason gains some ground as the race progresses and his tank is emptied.
Oh, actually, there's a battle for a lead right now. I just switched over to Jan Kowalski, and he was trying around outside into turn 1.
Yes, he's now trying to catch Richard's slipstream. Really making his move now. It's a bit surprising to me, like I said. Jan must be really confident that he can overpower Richard and open a gap, because otherwise this is not probably the move that was more convenient for him. It's still early in the race, and his position behind Richard was actually quite comfortable. Richard was trying to get his position back, and I believe that in the previous turn, the previous set of corners, Richard has realized that Jan has trouble when there is a car behind him, because his car oversteered for a moment.
Well, I know Richard said after the race last weekend that he had trouble when in traffic as well, so no, maybe he and the team has been able to solve it, but if they haven't, then this could be the cause of how this race will look for the rest until the finish.
Well, what they are doing now is certainly great for us as spectators, but it's not something I would do in this race at this point, because if you see that they have clearly superiority over the rest of the field, and also clearly they don't have much of an advantage over each other. So starting this fight that will be always stalling, not just in terms of lap time, but also in terms of stress and added increased loss of concentration, is probably a bit risky at this point.
It would certainly seem like it, but the one thing I was about to say was that it looked like Jonatan was closing in just a little bit, but...
Yes, that's exactly what I was trying to explain. The only thing that they are doing right now when they are overtaking each other is making it easy for Yuka to follow them. And while Yuka has not a superior car, certainly can be there if something weird happens. The race can end under caution. Just imagine the case that both are having trouble, both make a fast move and allow Yuka to go to the front, and they don't have then a chance to overtake him back. So it's a bit risky, like I said. This is the typical thing you would do when you are already quite confident in your lead. At the end of a 200 laps race, all the difference should be quite big if everyone has backed his cars correctly. So, like I said, great for us as spectators, but a bit risky.
Certainly. It would seem that Yuka is only gaining about the 10th a lap. That's probably somewhat because of the slipstreaming that they are still able to pull off while they are battling. And it'll also be interesting to how they might use, I think that's Martin Lacina they are about to close in on, to put him another lap down, if they will be able to use him in some kind of pick situation and maybe gain enough of a gap to avoid any slipstreaming.
We will see what happens now. Richard will probably try to put Martin in between them, but Jan is having none of it. He's going already for the inside. Maybe he's trying to do the same thing himself.
Wouldn't surprise me. Jan is a very, very crafty racer.
Well, he certainly has started to show his abilities, his possibilities now that he switched to the McLaren, because in the other car, in the Kingfish, he was probably not too happy with that car. It's not a bad car, but you know, sometimes it either clicks with the driver or it doesn't click. I'm speaking with someone who says that can only drive the Canyon Coyote.
Yeah, I think I recognize that myself. And it looked like Richard actually had a bit of a moment through 3 and or 4 when Jan went by earlier, but he was actually able to use Martin's draft to get back up to Jan instead of Jan getting a gap. So that's probably not quite what Jan had hoped would happen. As they are now side by side, but Richard is at least not brave enough at the moment to try and go around outside and won.
It's hard to tell what Richard is going to do.
Though I wouldn't put it past them to try that with 1 or 2 laps to go. Sorry for cutting you off.
No problem. We're on the same page, actually. We're just probably both of us a bit puzzled about what they are thinking. How long will they try to carry on with this? Because by now I think that it's quite evident that none of them has enough of an advantage to open a gap and stay calm and do his job for the rest of the race. They are, well, stuck in this situation. So they should probably think about cutting hostilities and reserving it for later. They also have pit stops to do. A pit stop is easy that something goes wrong. So, well, there are still many things that could happen.
Quite, but in the last couple of 3 laps, they've actually been able to pull away from Yuka. So even though they are battling, they are now pulling away, so that bit of the equation goes out the window. Though it looks like they now maybe have decided that discretion is the better part of valor in this fight, and status quo until the last pit stop.
It's also likely, as you said, because Jan is a very calculating driver, that he wanted to check what would happen if he made his move. I mean, how long it took Richard to get the possession back, in which turn he could do that, if he could do it on the slipstream in the main stretch or in the back stretch, depending on where he overtook him. And of course, Richard is no fool, so he will have gathered his own information. So it could be possible that what they were doing is just trying to test each other in view of the possible move at the end of the race.
Certainly wouldn't be a surprise. Just a bit, let's call it brave maybe, to do that right now when they didn't have that big of a gap to Yuka.
Yeah, but I think that they don't consider Yuka a factor, because they know his rhythm is not like the one they have, and you also have the secret desire that in this mangling around the other one might have an incident, not necessarily a shunt, but maybe a slip or something that puts him a big distance back. It's easy always to make an error. So when you're forcing a situation, well, you are drawn into it, because if the other guy is starting the hostilities, you want to keep up. But then at the same time, you always think it's the other who will have the worst part of this.
Very much so, but I also came to think of the fact that since Dana is out, Yuka can cut into her championship lead quite a bit, even if he only finishes third, so he might have more pace in the car, but he has decided that he's happy with third and sees everything else as a bonus, considering Dana is now out of the race.
Yeah, that's true. There are big points in this race. So the fact that Dana is not scoring is, of course, giving Yuka hopes, but don't forget that Richard is also in a position to make a huge jump in the championship if he is able to grab 1,000 points.
That's very true. And as we are talking about the points, Jan slipstreamed past Richard once again, which I find maybe a tad bit strange. Maybe he's looking to be first into the pits.
Just to make the maths quickly, for example, since Dana seems not to be scoring, she has 3,685 points. If Richard Coxon would win the race, he would be with 2,470 points. That's 1,200 points behind him. If Yuka wins the race, he would certainly be in very good striking distance from Dana. But I would say that this is very unlikely unless either both Jan and Richard crash. Jan in turn is in 23rd position with 245 points, so winning this race would bring him somewhere around 6th to 8th position, considering that Jason White is going to score some points, at least for now. Jacob is also still in the race. So, well, this is one of those races that can produce some big changes in the championship.
Very much so, and I'd assume very similar, very much like the real life 500 milers. I can't see anyone having a perfect 500 miles every 500 mile event.
Yes, and in real life, Roger McKee, who won the title with an outdated McLaren A, the one that David Jacks is driving this year, he did it very much by scoring points in all races. And he didn't fail also at the 500, as he won neither of them, but he was able to score decently in all of them. In fact, he was champion even long before the championship was over, because meanwhile the top teams, that's the ones we're seeing in the screen to a certain extent, Gulf McLaren in any case, and also Night Eagle, they were in their particular war of speed. Oh, and they're coming now to the pits, both at the same time.
So I assume Jan wanted to be first to the pits since he decided to go by earlier. Oh, and Pascal Mikler just left his pit stall, making that a little bit scary.
Look at Richard. He cleverly has left his car angled already for the exit.
Very much so, but he also had to try and get around Jan at the same time. Oh, he's already finished his pit stop.
That was very quick, and I would expect that he has only changed right side tires.
That has to be the case, because that's a large margin of time between the two stops.
He probably is confident that he can keep his rhythm even if only changing 2 tires. And for that reason, he thinks that maybe that gives him an opportunity. I mean, Richard has made his move. He has taken a risk. If he has changed only 2 tires, as it seems, he's willing to bet that this gap that he just opened with Jan could possibly allow him to open it even more, because he thinks that he can run faster than Jan in clean air. So we'll see if the gamble pays off, because remember, if Jan has changed 4 tires and Richard only 2, and Richard is wrong about his assumptions about Jan Kowalski's pace in clean air, this could backfire very badly on Richard towards the end of the stint when he is on short tires.
Indeed, it'll be very interesting to follow. Also noticed that the rest of the field in varying degrees has decided to pit. Jakob Fredriksson in the I think sole remaining
Jason's coming out now
car, actually. has pitted very early compared to previous pit stops.
We're 50 laps now from the end, as our director tells us.
Very much. We are indeed. Thank you very much, Ben.
And this is going to be interesting because if you do the maths, these cars are doing pit stops in 20 to 22 laps. That's the pit window. So unless there is any kind of yellow, we will be having 2 pit stops more, even if the last one is just for a tiny splash of fuel. But that's interesting. With the fuel that they have right now, they would need 2 pit stops.
Very much so. That's a very valid and interesting point. And
yes,
one
because it will be very tempting unless, like I said, unless there is a yellow and they can economize enough fuel. It will be very, very tempting to try to pit, to make a last pit stop for a splash and go. Take just some gallons of fuel and leave the tires as they are, because if you change tires at that point, then you're likely not going to be able to overtake the other car if he doesn't. But then again, after doing a stint, the tires are mostly shot, so it will be really a gamble if they do that. It's going to be a very interesting end.
Well, with you saying that might be what Richard has decided to gamble on now already, with only, as it seems, changing right side tires only, because then if he can keep the gap around what it is right now, or thereabout, he will have a faster car in the next stint, and then he can also leave the tires as they are, while Jan will struggle a lot if he has to leave the tires as they are, if he wants to keep up with Richard here.
Now, what I think has happened is that Richard changed only 2 and Jan changed 4 tires. So towards the end of the stint, Richard will have his tires quite degraded, because the inside tires are no longer to compensate the loss of grip of the outside ones. I tried this myself in one of these stints, and I can tell you, I thought myself, I'm not going to do this again unless it's really necessary in this race. Because okay, the car was going, but it became very oversteering. The lack of grip was terrible. The inside tires, they look to not do a lot, because all the load seems to be going on the outside ones, but that's not true. They are also holding the car. They are very important, and well, we'll see towards the end of the stint what happens. But if Jan has changed all 4, you should expect him to be able to catch up towards the end of the stint, because Richard at that point will start to suffer a lot from oversteer or whatever condition this causes in his chassis.
That's indeed. But unfortunately, most of the field looks pretty much spread out, so... Well, Pascal Mikkel and Lee Simpson just went very close to one another.
What's the difference between Richard Coxon and Jan Kowalski right now?
It is 7.5 seconds. It was about
that seems to me it's
9 seconds
the difference
after
between
the pit stop.
The difference between changing 4 tires or only 2 is 5 seconds. So I would say that for now, Richard's theory seems to prove right. And got 5 seconds for only changing 2 tires, and the other 2 seconds are because he gambled on him being able to go quicker than Jan if he didn't have Jan on his tail. That's the main reason he played that gamble. And it seems to be paying off so far, because he has put 2 more seconds on Jan. But again, like I said, we have to look towards the end of the stint because at that point we will really see how much Richard starts losing when his inside tires have done 2 stints and are completely out of grip, and his outside tires are with a normal degradation of the end of a stint.
So in about 7 or 8 laps maybe we will begin to see the real gain and loss of this strategy. But he definitely lost a little bit of time trying to lap Jacob Fredriksson just now. Coming up to him, going through turn 2.
Yes, Jacob usually sets up his car so that he has very high top speed in the straights. The advantage of the Coyote is the so-called sports car's nose. You can see that it's a fair nose, unlike the other cars that have winglets. That gives him a very aerodynamic front, so if he puts little wing on the rear, there isn't really anything except the intakes of the big V8 that are sticking out in the air that is causing a lot of drag. His top speed isn't higher, that's just because he's coming around the corners slowly, because he has less grip. But then at the exit of the turns, he can use the aerodynamic advantage, and it's one of the cars that accelerates quick out of the turns. So what happens is that if he has a car behind him, the car is a bit stuck because he can't overtake in the turns because he's in dirty air, and then when they come out to the straight, all of a sudden Jacob hammers it and vanishes.
Indeed, and it's one of two, I think 2 strategies, because the other one would be a more towards what the other drivers have to do that doesn't have that nose, right? With a bit more wing, both front and rear, and try to carry some speed through the turns as well. Make it more of a smoother ride compared to the more point and squirt situation for Jacob.
Yes, I know for a fact that my teammates, both Jason and Scott, had more wing than me. I used less wing in the qualification hits, and I had some big problems with that because the car was not as balanced as I wanted. It was quick, but it was quick only from mid to end of the stint. At the beginning of the stint, I immediately lost ground to the other cars, and then while I was catching them, those races were too short. So I put a bit more wing for this race, but not quite as much as Jason, for example, put. When you have more wing, that's not really a bad idea because the car is more stable, and when you are doing this long race, you don't want a car that is edgy and always trying to get away from you. But then at the same time, you have to gamble a bit. And towards the end of the stints, my car was certainly more tail-happy, and I had to nurse it through the corners, especially on traffic, but it paid off. That it was very quick. It's a bit sad for me to have had to abandon the race, but it was again only my fault, so can't complain.
Well, the positive side of this is that you get to see what could be a brilliant end to this race, because we are now seeing the problem for Richard, because in the last lap, say 2 laps, Jan has actually closed in by almost 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, that was to be expected. I don't think that Richard would try to change only 2 tires now. He would probably play safe because he knows that, well, if he goes with those 2 tires only, he would immediately lost all the ground because those tires can do any more stints. But in the future, when he puts now 4 fresh tires, but in the future when he puts tires in his next pit stop, he probably won't do this gamble again. I mean, he will be happy if after coming out of this pit stop, Jan again changes 4 tires, and there is a difference of 4-5 seconds maybe that allows him to keep Jan out of his slipstream, because in that case he doesn't make an error, it's hard for Jan to close in, be in striking distance to make an overtaking move.
Yes, but as always, traffic can also play a part, so it'll be interesting to see if he can actually keep ahead by 4 or 5 seconds, since I can see now that he's closing in on Lee Simpson, and I can see more cars up the straight here, so he will surely catch at least 2 or 3 more cars before the next pit stop window opens.
And if you follow Richard's car, you will be noticing that he is going very high in the turns. He is no longer staying below the black line. It is instead entering the turns well from above. Not all the turns, but turns 1 and 3 in any case. That's the point where you arrive with more speed. And because his car is oversteering much more, he has to enter the turns much higher. In this occasion, he could enter lower because he was having aero understeer from the car in front. But look at that, he's now a bit higher, and he will likely enter this next turn again a bit higher, because the car is likely now already touchy. There you go, well past the black line. Coming out again. See, he enters clearly above the black line, because if he eased the car below or into the black line, it is very likely that he would oversteer and start losing the rear immediately.
Very much so. But he's actually been able to stay the loss of time, because it stayed at about 6 seconds for the last 3 or 4 laps, so this
like I
could
said,
turn out
it's
to be
that his gamble is paying off. He was right in his guess that Jan was not going to be able to keep his rhythm if he was not right behind Richard.
That would very much seem to be the case indeed. He's actually pulled half a second on that lap. I think maybe Jan came across Lee Simpson and tried to lap him. He's actually not even caught Lee Simpson yet, so that's very interesting. That would indicate that that Richard is able to drive faster with older tires, so maybe the race has been decided right here during the last set of pit stops.
Maybe so, but anything can happen. Like I said, we're going for not just for another, but 2 more pit stops in this race, and the last one is going to be a big gamble for everyone. I mean, yes, they will both know that they can't risk trying to put tires. They will go just for a splash and dash of fuel. But it remains to be seen what happens when the car does many more laps after that stint.
Indeed.
The grip is going to be really frightening at that point.
Definitely. I certainly wouldn't like to be behind the wheel of any of these cars at that point.
Well, it's like 150 horsepower.
Richard, I think, might have touched the wall coming out of 2 then.
We'll see. You have to watch his lap times now to see if he's losing any. But like I said, the cars, well, with the short tires, they become quite edgy. Not comfortable to drive them like that. And also don't forget, he will now do a long pit stop, and who knows, maybe Jan is the one who tries now the gamble and tries to put only 2 tires and see what happens and closes it 5 seconds. Certainly on Richard.
That's the area I wanted to get to, because with Richard changing 2 tires on the last pit stop, he can now go for 4 new, so he could go for the gamble of not changing the tires at the last pit stop and still have pretty good tires on the car. Jan wouldn't have that luxury if he goes for only 2 tires on the next stop.
That's exactly the point. The thing is, if they will be able to do the maths while they are driving, Jan should by now be able to see that they are going to need another pit stop. Not just the next one, but another, in that it will be a very short one. So if he gambles and right now only changes 2 tires, he will come 5 seconds closer to Richard, that's for sure, because Richard will change all 4. But then at the same time, he knows that at the end he can't allow himself to get new tires. He will only be able to get fuel if he wants to stay in the fight for the lead. So, well, let's see what happens. Ben tells us that Jan has just now asked for a pit stop, so he will likely... Yes, he's diving for the pits. Coming in now.
And Jukka Matanen actually pitted a lap earlier. So maybe he's
That's interesting. How many laps till the end now?
It is exactly 30 laps.
30 laps, yeah, like we expected. They're going to pit once more, and then very likely need to pit 5 or 6 laps from the end. So let's see what Richard Coxon does now. Still on the track.
Looks like Jan changed 4 tires on this pit stop.
And there comes Richard. He will be hitting right now and without any doubt changing his 4 tires. So let's see. Meanwhile, Jan is coming out of the pits. It seems that Richard has gained a good advantage on him. Heading now Jan Kowalski for turn 3, while Richard is still in the pits. Jan Kowalski is in the chute coming out of turn 4, while Richard takes off right now. Whoa, this will be close.
And he changed 4 tires as well.
Yes. So Richard's coming out now. He's in turn 2. 1 turn advantage, but Richard is already hammering it down the backstretch. He's in the backstretch, catching speed, while Jan is coming out of turn 2 now. They're in the same backstretch.
It's almost a whole backstretch between them, so that would be about 8.5 to 9 seconds at this point in time as Martin Lacina dives into the pits ahead of Richard Coxon, coming onto the front stretch. At the start-finish line, as they both go by, it's 6.8 seconds.
So our director did the maths, saying that there's a difference. Wait a moment, I need to pin that. What's the current difference between Richard and Jan?
Looks like 6.7 seconds at the moment.
Yeah, so the difference too. They both did a 4-wheel pit stop. And indeed, Richard's gamble paid off. He was right. Jan was not able to follow him. The difference was just probably 1.5 to 2 seconds, what Richard was able to gain on him. And the other 5, 1 second, and the other 5 are exclusively for the 2-wheel pit stop that Richard did. So that was well played by Richard Coxon. He's now safely on 4 tires, looking for the last, for his penultimate stint. There will be that splash and dash, and we will see what happens.
Definitely. It looks like Richard might have had a bit of trouble on the last lap they did, because Jan gained almost half a second.
And Jason White's coming out of the pits now, still in a solid 4th position.
So maybe looking at the lap times as they are, maybe Richard struggles a bit more on cold tires and a lot of fuel compared to Jan and his McLaren.
Probably so. Jan has a bit more power in the Offenhauser, so maybe he has a tad more, 1 degree more wing or something like that, and that gives him more stability at the beginning of the stint. On cold tires, the aerodynamics are very important. If you have more downforce, you can certainly work quicker at the beginning of the stint until the tires are hot. You also hit them quicker because they're going quicker through the turns, so there's more friction. It's a win-win situation, but like I said, well, from mid to end of the stint, you are also putting more stress on the tires, and you may have some nasty surprises.
Yes, I think a couple of drivers might have found those nasty surprises out earlier during this race, with a couple to three spinning onto the infield coming out of the turns here. It looks like the pace has stabilized now, and it's staying at about 6.4 seconds. So it was definitely a masterstroke by Richard to change those two tires. And other than that, it looks pretty much settled as well for this race. Main interest now, I assume, will be with, as you've said earlier, Alberto, the splash and dash, and how everyone handles the one tires.
We'll see. We'll see. The key will be what happens in this last pit stop, or more precisely just after, because, well, they will be coming out of the pits with their tires completely degraded, and they still have to do some laps in racing rhythm.
So, Richard was really close to the wall then. He got some wash from Jason White, who's going into the pit. Okay,
no,
it's not
he's
going into the pits. It looked like he was indicating that he would want to go into pits, which would be one way to solve it, by pitting earlier then and then doing a quick splash now and not have to worry about how the tires wear later on, but instead have it now. It's more progressive. I also noticed that someone was in the. At least it looked like someone was in the pits. Lee Simpson is indeed in the pits.
Yes, pit.
So it looks like this will be his last pit stop of this race, where the 179 laps done now for the leader.
The difference between Richard and Jan is more or less constant.
It would seem to be so. It's 1/10 difference after another 2 or so laps here. Oh, and Lee. Oh, Lee. Oh. He had a bit of a moment coming off the pit apron, and he span up his wheels and almost span onto the infield. And then when he tried to get back on the road, he almost span again to the right instead, up onto the racing line.
Yeah, I think everyone is by now quite tired. Concentration is probably not as good as it should be. And it's easy to have some kind of error here, especially with these cars.
Certainly, it doesn't take much of a difference in throttle application to have the wheel spinning, and then you're off. For example. It looks like the best Voigt engined car, unless anything amazing happen will be Jacob Fredriksson, who I think will be very happy to finish a race after a few rounds of running into trouble. No worries, Ben.
It's hard for me to comment on anything because I don't have lap times or even lap counts. But yeah, that's what you get when you join as a spectator. You use less bandwidth, but you have less data. My tab key still doesn't work, so I can display even the names of the people. I can follow someone. I know, for example, it's the leader, but when he's coming close to someone else, I can't see his name. But checking the differences, it seemed to me that Richard and Jan are still almost as they were. And it's Richard entering turn 3 at the same point where Jan has exit turn 2. So it's the backstretch difference between them.
Yeah, it's still pretty much the same as it was. So you are very much correct.
So, wonder now what Jan must be thinking. He might be content to stay in this second place, which is anyway a great result, especially in these 500-mile races, or whether he's cooking something, trying to think about anything. But there's not a lot of margin now because he knows it's just a splash and dash. So. I
wouldn't put it
don't
past
think
him
that
to
there
try
would be
something.
many options in his position, but in any case, he's lapping as quick as always, trying not to ease the pressure on Richard, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're definitely driving, well, maybe not definitely, but looks to be driving about the same lap times they've been running the whole race, which is quite impressive lap times to say the least. Richard, for example, has been in the high 46s and very low 47s for the whole race, and that's when he's pitted, obviously.
Yeah, that's something that we could not match in any case. With the Parnelli, I did high 46s towards the end of the stint. I was really risking my neck by then because the car was much more unstable, quicker, but much more unstable. That Richard seems to be quite happy doing that. Well, obviously he's a superior driver, but he seems to be quite comfortable in the car. He managed in the end to get a setup that is working well for him. Get quickly on the championship lead.
Indeed, but he lost a little bit of time then lapping Martin Lacina, about 3 to 4 tenths he lost, not being able to go on the throttle when he probably wanted to, coming out to turn 4. So traffic could still play a part in this.
Yes, and the speeds are very high, and the closure rate here is also very high in many situations, so it's easy that something goes wrong. It's a bit of a misunderstanding with a lapped car, not even if an accident happens, but if your car is somehow, if you lose your speed because you need to brake to avoid a collision, at the speeds that we are going, this 6-7 seconds of difference with Jan Kowalski, they vanish very quickly. You lower your speed to let's say 150 mph, and the other car is coming almost 200 down the straight. The closure rate is 50 mph, and that means that a lot of ground is covered in not just that, because when you slow down to 150 mph, you need a lot of time to get back to 200 mph. So any small error can be really paid dearly here.
Quite so, and I mean a yellow right here and now would really put spanners in the works in the way of completely nullifying the gap that Richard built up. So
that would be a true Russian roulette. I can tell you, it would be pure mayhem, craziness towards the end of the race, because, well, everyone would go their guns out, knife in the teeth. They are behind the pace car right now.
Yeah. Would be a
right
real...
now going to lap again Jakob Fredriksson.
And does it very nice and easy.
Yes, in the straight he was able to follow it through a turn, and when he came to the straight in the slipstream, he had no problems. I'm not sure what fuel load or whatever does Jakob have right now. He might be able to stretch it to the last laps without doing any extra pit stop, which in itself could be interesting.
Well, he could try, but I mean 30 laps, well, 26 laps, it's still quite a bit of an ask when you've done 22, 23 laps previously.
He's right now, how many laps since he pit?
I think he pitted on lap 171, so that
no,
would
then
be...
he must pit again, yes.
Sorry, 17...
User joined your channel.
I wasn't entirely sure what time that we reached. Coxon is into the pits. So he's decided to go for a splash now.
Good evening.
Hello, Michel. How are you?
Oh, not so happy. After second pit stop, I chose wrong tires with 1 and with 25, and the times was quite better than in practice. So
but then you got that stupid penalty. Absolutely strange.
Yes, I don't know why and what to do with longest line when there was a race in full speed.
It's very weird because nobody else has got penalties. We have seen many other pit stops since then. I don't know, you pointed something we will need to investigate, and that's that the game again seemed to go crazy at half distance, because it happened something similar at Indianapolis. It's really strange, and it's very unfortunate because that took several cars out of contention. They were disqualified.
Yes, I was surprised when I was on 11th place, and then after pits, 3 laps, I didn't saw anything or hear anything about making some drive-through or anything else. So
yeah, it's quite sad because a disqualification is always, especially when it's undeserved, a very stupid one. It's a very bad way to end the race. And I mean, all of us would always prefer going out in a smoke of glory, hitting the wall when trying to make a quicker lap time. But this is what happens sometimes. Yeah, the game's not perfect.
And sorry to cut you off, but I think the race was just decided because when Jan Kowalski now went into the pits, he missed his pit stall twice.
Oh,
so
that's unfortunate for him.
He probably lost 8 to 10 seconds right there.
So, bye for now, and keep going your good work in commentating these races.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
Michel.
Bye.
User disconnected from your channel.
So thank you to Michael for coming in here and
Yes.
having a quick chat with us, even with that kind of ending to your race. That's probably the most frustrating way to have a race end.
Mhm.
But in the meantime, we have 7 laps to go.
Well, Richard should
6
be
laps to
pitting any
go at the end
moment.
of this one.
And this is the only opportunity now that Jan has, something going on for Richard, and it's this last pit stop. It's obvious that Richard will be going only for fuel.
Richard has actually already pitted for fuel before, so he
Okay, I missed
he
that when
went
I
in,
was interviewing Michel.
he went into the pits when Michal came and joined us in the booth here, so
He didn't change tires, didn't he?
I don't think so. It looked like it was a quick splash and dash and go, same as for Jan, but
And neither did Jan.
no, but with the missed pit
Yeah,
stall,
yeah.
it's what it is.
Well, I'm watching Richard's car now, and he certainly is moving around a lot more. Those tires have already a full stint on them. And, well, he must be really careful now. He must nurse the car to the end. Not that Jan is able to put a lot of pressure on him because of the difference that he has lost, but Jan's right now coming out of turn 2. Richard's entering turn 3. Well, it's not a huge difference between them. I mean, it's exactly the same that they were having before, or so it looked.
Quiet and actually a bit further down the field with all the splash and dash quick pit stops going on. We have a battle between Peter Lavak and Jakob Fredriksson.
Oh,
with
yeah.
Jakob coming up around outside right here, going into 3.
Yes, he is overtaking him for position, but Peter is having none of that. He's willing to keep his position. Fortunately, this is not Formula 1, where only the 6 scores, but still a position is a position. And
well, I don't think it doesn't look like it's sealed just yet.
There goes Peter. We had mentioned him a lot because he has been having a discreet race, but then at the end he has been there.
Well, his very early race, he was actually battling with Raoul Jared, and we followed that battle a little bit, so it hasn't been completely discreet and quiet, but the last half of the race has, as you said, been very, very quiet for him. By the looks
He's
of
been
things,
able
but
to
this,
overtake, but Jakob will be trying again. And I must say, the Coyote with the sports car nose has one advantage that not everybody knows. It's one of the cars that is less affected by the turbulence of the car in front, because his downforce comes not just from that shovel nose, but from the whole body, and the inclination of that shovel nose just being the entry of the air over the car. He's not as much affected, so he can follow the other cars much better through the turns, as you can see.
Quiet, and he has a very good draft right here. Goes towards the outside, but it's not quite enough. It seems like you will need a very good exit, and maybe a slight mistake from Peter to be able to take it on, to be able to get by again.
We must be right now very close to the finish already.
Yep, the leader will be heading on to the final lap, which Richard does right now.
And Jakob's going at it again, trying to go this time for the outside. No, I believe he's trying to get some angle to make a cleaner exit.
Well, he will get one more lap after this one to try and get by Peter.
Quite fun battle at the end of the race these two are giving us.
Definitely. But right now,
Jacob had to pit. He just ran out of fuel. Wow, with one lap to go.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. Well, Richard comes down the front straight in the meantime and takes the win here at Ontario Motor Speedway in the 500 miles.
The king of the 500 milers, Richard Coxon, as our director Ben rightfully pointed a moment ago, because he already won last year the Indianapolis 500 and the Marlboro 500 in the kart series.
Yes, and Jan Kowalski comes home second in this race in his McLaren.
Still a great and meritorious race by Jan, also by Yuka, and Jason White will come fourth. Not a better result in the end for the Parnelli team.
Certainly not. That's a very good salvage after the issues for the other cars in the team. Martin Lasina takes fifth. Peter Lavak gets, a very secure sixth in the end. And Jacob comes onto the front straight now and finishes seventh in his Coyote and the best Voigt engine car in the field. Pascal Mikla comes home eighth, and our last runner in ninth is Lee Simpson.
That's a top 10 for every finisher.
It is indeed. I think they will be very happy with that, especially after such a long and grueling race.
Yes, indeed. Have a look, because I was looking. The real race 500 was won by Wally Dallenbach. There were 12 cars finished, but 33 started. So I guess that we more or less covered the historic statistics.
It's probably about the same percentage of finishers at least. But with that, I think we will finish off here. Thank you everyone for watching, and thank you Alberto for joining me and Ben in the booth, and thank you very much Ben for the camera work once again.